All right, welcome back to another episode of Blown Coverage. Week 10 is done, and we've got a lot to talk about. This weekend there was an ACC implosion, and there were some pretty good games, but I think we need to start with the somewhat big news. Not as big of news as last week when Brian Kelly got fired, but people have been wondering, is Hugh Freeze going to finally get fired? And he was. This happened today. This is coming off a loss 10-3 to Kentucky. Is kind of a situation for Auburn. Like, Kentucky is just one of those teams. If you can't beat them, then you're probably not the guy for the job. We've talked about before how good Auburn's defense is, and they have been outstanding. But they just can't seem to figure it out on the offensive side of the ball. And I was thinking prior to this game, like, if they could just keep what they're doing on defense and you can just get the right offensive coordinator, then Auburn can be a scary team. But at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe you just go a different direction because you really can't be losing to Kentucky. And yeah, so I get it. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago, how these middling teams in the SEC should probably be holding on to their coaches a little bit longer because you can't at Auburn have the same expectations as in Alabama or Georgia. But I understand why they made the move that they did. And anyway, they did make that move. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think Auburn is definitely one of those schools, like with the right person in there, though, they can go out there and compete with some of the bigger schools, like you're saying. Okay. So, like Hugh Freeze, like the past several years, what he's done being able to do recruiting wise for Auburn, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would maybe guess to say it's been one of the best recruiting streaks for Auburn in quite some time. And frankly, he's got some really good players on the team, but what he's been able to do with those players is really not too much, to be honest with you. Um, and I don't really know. Like, I definitely feel like, yes, you've got to hold on to him, but with Hugh Freeze, I don't know. It's just kind of like the same story every freaking year, man, to be honest with you. I think this was like his, fourth year? And I mean, it was the same thing over and over and over, just very small improvements. And like, I think this is the first year that Auburn's had like a really good defense off the top of my head. But, you know, Hugh Freeze is known for the offense, right? And that's honestly sucked. Jackson Arnold, I mean, I remember watching him at OU. I was like, okay, this guy, he sucks. Which, I mean, in all fairness, it may just be like the kind of offense that he's in. But I mean, honestly, I feel like from what Auburn games I've watched, I don't know how else like or how that guy would be able to do anything productive in college. I really just don't. I mean, Hugh Freeze like really adapted the offense to him, and anyway, very very little success. So I don't know. I think and for some odd reason, like when we talk about this, like I keep thinking James Franklin, because I do think Auburn. I mean, man, dude, like if you're Auburn, if James Franklin can do what he did at Penn State for you guys, hey, that's an upgrade. Even if he can't even get you to a national championship, at least he just moves the program up, to where it's in the spotlight pretty much every year.
Yeah, I think that would actually be a pretty good fit there. I think that would make
Yeah.
sense for both sides. I could see why Auburn would want it, and it's not like for James Franklin that's a bad job. Like that's a place you can go and compete. It's not Alabama or Georgia, but it's still a good job. And I don't know if you can expect right now. Like I don't think LSU is going to be interested. I don't even think Florida. Maybe Florida would be interested, but yeah, I think that would make sense. And I agree with you that that's something I didn't even think about, but they've recruited really well at Auburn. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, he really has had the opportunities to be successful. So,
And maybe this is a hot take too, a little bit, but I feel like Auburn right now, there's just still plenty of opportunity as far as landscaping goes and recruiting around them because, you know, I know Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, they are doing really good this year and stuff, but it feels almost kind of like there's not that monopoly that Alabama has on Alabama anymore just because with Nick Saban leaving. So to get somebody like James Franklin, and I think that's kind of one thing we talked about when James Franklin first got fired was like his inability to get those guys like on the offensive side of the ball to he was not able to get the explosive players he needed to excel past teams like Ohio State. Okay. Uh, Not to say that it'd be any easier for him down in Alabama because I mean, out of the two between like Pennsylvania, Alabama, I would definitely give Alabama the notch. But I don't know. I think it could be interesting. I mean, obviously James Franklin, he's got like a really good system in place as far as how to build like kind of from the rubble up, so to speak, on a program. And I don't think Auburn is like at the rubble necessarily, but they need to be, taken up another level. So anyway, um, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see who takes their job and, or takes that job, excuse me.
Yeah. Should Auburn be? I mean, look, they made the decision that they made, and Kentucky probably had everything to do with it. But take jobs like Auburn. This is kind of a thing I was wondering. Should schools be less willing to fire their coach, being that these major jobs are open elsewhere across the country? Because now that there's so many jobs open and they're big jobs, you're less likely to get a big name. Or do
Yeah.
you think it even matters to a school like Auburn because you probably weren't getting that big name anyway? But you know what? Auburn could get a big name. I don't know. What do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think it matters?
Off the top of my head, I mean, I think people would be more gravitated to take the LSU, the Florida job over the Auburn job. But I mean, I think to an extent money would talk. And I mean, if Auburn, I think Auburn's a place like if you were to get the right fit, the right coach, and just have a pretty good hold on that area in recruiting, I think they could be pretty successful, to be honest with you. Um, and I think the reason why they didn't necessarily, I meant to say this a couple minutes ago, but they kind of just let him go. It's like if your coach has recruited, I won't say it like the highest level possible because that's not it by any means, but he's recruited at a pretty good level with nothing to show for it. So what does it go back to pretty much? Just coaching and how you manage your team. And I don't know. I felt like there was a lot more to be desired, to be honest with you. I mean, he hasn't had any good quarterbacks. I will say that in his defense. What quarterback has he had to work with that could actually take his team a little far? There's not really one off the top of my head. Pretty much every
Yeah.
year it's been like a two quarterback. It's been like a QB competition type of thing, like pretty much every year.
Definitely. Okay, so it'll be interesting to see what Auburn does. By the way, I still think Auburn, no matter who the coach is, with their defense, watch out for their final game of the year against Alabama. That's not going to be an easy game for Alabama, but we'll get to that
That
whenever
going
we
to
get.
be actually, where's that going to be at this year? I
It's
forgot.
going to be at Auburn.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So it could be interesting. So let's get into this week's slate of games. I want to start with the early game. It's your game. Vanderbilt falls 31-34, and Texas escapes. Weird thing to say. I felt like Texas controlled the game, but what do you think? What happened here?
Yeah, it's very weird because, I mean, honestly, we were beating the brakes off of them. And I feel like, because we had this, I forgot what game it was that we had this conversation about. I feel like if Sark and then kept calling the plays like he did the first like three quarters and like just kind of let Arch air it out a little bit better and just keep the run game going like off the pass game instead of kind of just stepping on the brakes, trying to milk the clock out, and giving them like basically we were put in a situation where we would maybe get a first down and then have to punt. So we were just punting the ball a lot more than we had the entire game, like in that fourth quarter, giving Pavia more chances. And I had to go to the restroom, but during this play, which really kind of pissed me off. But so I missed the play that Diego Pavia threw it to his tight end Stowers, and like he went in, ran the ball in with no problems around him. So I was like, "What the heck? How does that happen?" I wasn't able to see a play, and the only replay I saw was just him basically wide open, catching it and running. Thought that was very odd. Um, I will say, I think it's complete BS. I can't remember if it was the actually now to think about it, trying to think if it was a 2 point conversion or a touchdown, but where basically Gilbo, number three, got the Vanderbilt player. He extended, but he was like literally probably a millimeter shy of the goal line. I mean, honestly, and it was pretty obvious, like no bias there. I mean, he was short. I can't remember if that was a 2 point conversion or a touchdown,
I
but
believe it was a touchdown.
yeah. So I thought that was BS. Now, who's to say they wouldn't go score the next play? But I think it was BS. And then it was kind of this right there set off some things in motion, which led Diego Pavia to come back, have a really good game, and really he just had a good quarter. To be honest with you, on the pregame show, I was telling you that basically what do we need to do? Control Pavia and his running ability, and we pretty much did that. Forgot how many. Yeah, he had 43 rushing yards, and probably most of that came kind of at the late in part of the game. And I mean, basically, our defense played like really well, except the secondary at the end. It's kind of so funny. And it's almost like 3 quarters of this game we shut them out, and then the last quarter, it's like they just go all out. Man, it was almost kind of like a reverse on the Mississippi State game for us last week. But anyway, I was actually really excited to see our offense come out like that. You know, our defense has pretty much been lights out for the most part. Okay. So I was excited to see them respond. And I don't know if you kind of saw some of the chippiness that Colin Simmons had whenever he sacked him. He got like right up in his face and everything like that. I really enjoyed that. And I respect Pavia. He's one of my favorite players in college this year. Um, but they're like Vanderbilt was riding on a really strong high, not in like a cocky way or anything by chance. I feel like mentally they're one of the best teams in college, and just for us to kind of, I don't know, just say like, I don't know, it was kind of nice to see some of that chippiness. Arch had his best game yesterday. I feel like I feel like this was the first game where Arch kind of felt like he knew what to do to some degree. I also think that play calling helped him. Just getting the ball out of his hands really quickly, just help him get into a rhythm a lot sooner. And I mean, Wisner had 75 yards yesterday. So our in Baxter had a couple good runs too. So we had over 100 rushing yards. The thing I liked the most was that we had been doing all year was basically run on first down, not really get anything, go like do a long pass, not get anything, and we always just kept getting like 3rd and 10, 3rd and 10, or 3rd and 9 or whatever, and it just put us at a really bad situation. Ryan Niblett didn't really have a good day yesterday as far as special teams go, but I think that's just going to be expected some weeks just because teams are going to be like literally watching him constantly now, just so he doesn't, let that breakaway speed get any more touchdowns or whatever. Good overall win. And forgot what else I was going to say. Good overall win. I didn't like that it was interesting at the end there, but I guess did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say this game kind of went how I thought it would go. Now, I didn't expect Vanderbilt to come back at the end like that, but going into the week, a lot of sharp bettors were really all over this game because it was just a great matchup for Texas. And the only thing that surprised me, I think, was just how Vanderbilt could not get after the passer very well. I did expect them to
Yeah.
show up more in that way. Now, for Vanderbilt, it was kind of worst case scenario the way the game started. I mean, you allow it. By the way, I mean, I just think that's bad defense. I was surprised by Vanderbilt's defense because
They've been
you
pretty
know,
good all year. Yeah.
yeah, in Texas on offense, look, that was a screen pass. First play of the game,
Yeah.
screen pass, you allow a 75-yard touchdown. Like, you kind of got to be ready for that one. And I said it in the pregame show. Vanderbilt is not a team that is going to be built to play from behind. And all of a sudden, not only were they behind 7, they're behind 14. And that's just not what they do. It's not what they do well. If you look at the stats, yes, Pavia had, I think, 365 passing yards. That doesn't really, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and that's a good line. But that doesn't really tell the tale of what happened.
Yeah.
He had to pass the ball in the second half because he's down so much. And I
Yeah.
mean, credit to him, he did. He
Yeah.
did. But it wasn't. Yeah, I just didn't like anything from Vanderbilt in this game. They were kind of due for one of these performances. And look, they just got off some big games,
Yeah.
and
They do.
Texas, they kind of have kind of have their mojo right now. A lot of confidence coming off the way they won the games, and now they're going into a bye, first game at home in a while. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Texas going forward because their next game's Georgia at
Yeah.
Georgia. They got to win it. Here's the interesting thing. Can you imagine if Texas does find a way to win out and A&M also finds a way to win out and that last game of the year is it'll be a playoff spot for Texas, but also a chance to be in the SEC championship game. And just it's already going to be a crazy game, but it's going to be less crazy if Texas just loses next week. But if Texas finds a way to win out, that would be a pretty
It'll be a
insane.
top 10, like two top 10 matchups.
Yeah, yeah, with a lot on line. It's basically the same as last year because A&M was looking to get in the SEC championship last year. They were trying to get in the playoffs. It would be kind of be the reverse this year.
Yeah. Because I
So
think y'all were right around like 13 or 14 or 15 or something like that.
yeah, so that could be interesting. Obviously, plenty has to happen before that. And yeah, I will say this, and to me, I think this is for Texas like the most important thing. Forget how good they actually are, because I still don't think like they're not elite, but they're probably ranked properly at this point. It's just about confidence. Like they found ways to win the games that they've won. And they can say, no matter who they're against or what the matchup was, it doesn't matter. They have two top 10 wins. They have that. So they've got the confidence now. They've won on the road and at home. So going into that Georgia game off a bye, I think they're going to have something to work with. So that will be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and that's another really good thing too is that we have the bye before we go to Georgia. Just two things, I guess. So our offensive line for the Vanderbilt game. So our starting center had been Cole Hudson. They moved him to left guard and then allowed, I think his name is Connor Robertson, which he's kind of been a backup center for us. He's played in some relief games. They put him at center. And maybe that's kind of the ongoing rotation because our tackle play, although Baker, number 73, had been getting false starts left and right every single game, which is so annoying. He's played pretty solid, so the tackle is not an issue, and DJ Campbell, our right guard, is not an issue. It was between the center and the left guard what was the issue, and maybe with the addition of just playing those two centers, one at left guard, one at center, maybe that kind of helps us a little bit further. Vandy, up to yesterday, had only allowed 7 sacks, by the way. And I want to say that we got 6 or maybe even 7 sacks on Pavia yesterday alone. So, listen, PK is really good. Anyway, it'll be interesting. And like you said, I mean, really and truly, maybe Ohio State and Indiana, I would say, are the only two teams I could think of off the top of my head that could just. I mean, Texas competed with Ohio State, so maybe I think Texas could compete with anybody. Like you said, basically, it just comes down to the confidence, and hopefully, they're in rhythm. Rhythm, excuse me.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, the next matchup is Georgia. So let's talk about Georgia. Stop me if you've heard this before, but Georgia escapes. It's kind of what they do. They've got the lives, the 9 lives, and this was a rivalry game. Kind of expected it to be close. I kind of expected at some point Georgia to pull ahead and win this by like 10, but they didn't.
What did
Now,
you think before we go too far? What did you think of that pass? Did you watch
oh, I
that?
think he caught it. I think he
Yeah,
caught it.
I know because the way the ball like moves sideways.
Hmm.
I mean, it did. I mean, clearly shows it hit the arm and went sideways, in my opinion. And that, which honestly, man, I mean, I think it could have potentially made this game like I don't know. It could have given Florida some motivation, or not motivation, but some mojo, and then go get a score. And it very well could have been a different story right now.
It could have, but the common consensus is, and I agree. I don't think it impacted the game that much. because I think Florida had opportunities. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, you never know what one play could do. The
Yeah,
officiating and play calls like that happened in the Texas game, happened in this game. Big controversies in the Auburn Georgia game from a couple weeks ago. The officiating has not been the best. And
yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but the referee from that Georgia Auburn game got suspended for the year. So, you know, that's got to be fixed. No idea how you fix it. But as far as this game is concerned, Georgia pulls out the victory. This makes Georgia's playoff chances 90%. That's according to the Athletics projection. And their only well, they have two opponents left, but they host Texas and then Georgia Tech, who we'll get to, which I don't think that's an easy game either.
Mm-mm.
But look, Georgia find ways to win. The thing is for Florida, by the way, this was, I believe, Florida's first game without Billy Napier coming
Right.
off a bye. And I think that heavily favors Florida because now that they can throw out some stuff that Georgia's maybe not ready for. The thing I keep seeing with Florida, and you saw this last year, is you see the potential for them. You're like, you know what? Florida could be pretty good. They're competing with all these teams. And
Yeah.
that's true.
I
And I
think
see
that's
the
been like the last 2 years. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like you see the potential with Lagway, but Lagway is very streaky. And I just wonder at what point do we say, okay, is Lagway next year going to be this great quarterback, or is this who he is actually? Like he's just a streaky guy. He can make the big plays, but he's not consistent. And I feel like that kind of describes Florida as a team. So it's
Yeah.
going to be interesting next year. Their schedule is not going to be nearly as daunting as this year. And, we'll see who the coach is.
The
A lot.
remaining schedule is horrible for them too.
Yeah, yeah.
It is.
So we'll see. I guess this game kind of ended up how at this point you expect a Georgia game to go. They're just barely going to pull it off, and I just know that's how the Texas game is going to be here in a couple weeks. And I would actually watch out for this week when Georgia faces Mississippi State at
Yeah.
Mississippi State.
Their offense is tricky, man. Really, all you've got to do. I think the recipe to like be like, I feel like if you have if Ole Miss just had a slightly better defense, man, I think like Ole Miss would still be undefeated, right? Because all it takes, I feel like, is just a good enough defense with a high powered offense, and you've got them beat. So I we'll talk about it later, I guess. But yeah, I'll go
One
with
thing about Gunnar Stockton,
yeah,
he really is pretty like game manager like. He's not elite, at least not right now,
yeah.
but he always finds a way to be clutch when it matters.
Kind
Because
of
he
like
really
Stetson
could have
Bennett was for
screwed them
them.
up a few games. Really could have, but didn't. Allowed them to win. But anyway, I don't know if you have more thoughts on this game, or if you don't.
I feel like Gunnar Stockton is maybe just a little bit better of a Stetson Bennett for him, which I feel like Kirby likes just to have a game manager. I mean, obviously, you would like to have like an elite quarterback that's more than that, but I don't think there's any problem with being a game manager and quarterback as long as you don't turn the ball over, which Gunnar Stockton hasn't really turned the ball over. Yesterday, he had an interception. Um, uh, I was wanting to see like if Florida had 2 bye weeks or just one because I thought somebody had said that and I was like, okay, that's a little weird. When was this?
Definitely just one, like
Okay,
after Mississippi State. Their
okay,
last.
which definitely helped them just because what was his name, Billy Gonzalez taking over. They had a week to prepare without Billy Napier, and anyway, I feel like that's how or a Florida rivalry game, and on top of that, it allowed Florida to really make this game competitive, in my opinion. But that's really all I have to say.
Yeah. Okay, next game I kind of wanted to talk about. Let's talk about the OU Tennessee game. And I tell you what, my computer needs a charger right now. So why don't you just say whatever you want to think about the game, whatever you have to say about the game, and I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. So I watched the majority of this game last night, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought overall it was a good win for OU just because. Actually, you know what? We'll just edit this.
Okay, I guess I'll talk about the game then. OU wins
I
this
was just
game
giving it a
33
second.
to 27, and this is a big loss for Tennessee. This, basically boots them from playoff contention. And at this point, they really didn't have any signature wins. Their signature win was a loss when they barely lost to Georgia, losing by one. But we kind of talked about it coming in, like Tennessee, these teams a little bit fraudulent. And OU really, we've talked about their daunting schedule. They had to find a way to win one of these games. I was actually very impressed by OU in this because Tennessee has one of the best offenses in the country. And you see they
Yeah.
scored 27 points. That doesn't really tell the tell of how this went. And granted, they did move the ball pretty well. They outgained OU in this game.
Oh yeah.
But key to this was the three turnovers. I mean, and
Yep.
that was the difference.
Oh
And
yeah.
I would say
And some of those
also,
interceptions, by the way, looked horrible. I mean,
yeah,
uh,
really bad.
both of them. Well, yeah. Both the interceptions he had looked horrible and different. Definitely the momentum swingers. Because OU was able to get points off of both.
Right. Definitely. And I also wonder if the loss to Ole Miss last week actually helped OU in this game.
Hmm.
Because Ole Miss probably exposed whatever flaws there were in the OU defense, and then maybe they were able to look at that and say, okay, this is what we need to patch up. I obviously don't know that. It's just a thought. I'll also say I think both teams, the score doesn't completely tell the tale of this. I don't know if you'll agree with me, but OU 33 points. I didn't watch that game and see an OU explosion offensively. Don't forget, a lot of this was off turnovers.
Hmm.
And that's a big deal because Tennessee has a very bad defense.
Yeah, it is. I mean, OU had OU's running back had a good day. Mateer still actually really didn't have that bad or really that good of a game. Interception, 159 passing yards. I mean, honestly, pretty bad, especially against this defense. Honestly, no touchdowns. I was kind of surprised because they were having to use him in the run game quite a bit again, and it's like I just don't like having to rely on the quarterback that much, like as heavily as OU depends on him just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And you could say the same thing for Arch, and I don't like it either. Uh, I don't know. Anyway, kind of like, yeah, I agree with what you said.
Yeah, OU next game at Alabama. And, that could be interesting.
Yeah,
That
it
could be
could
interesting
be.
because OU beat them last year, obviously different spot. But Alabama continues to kind of go through this gauntlet. They really can't afford to let up. They're going to be at home, but that OU defense, if they can shut down Simpson, don't forget that Alabama is very one-dimensional. The thing is, can OU move the ball? But we can talk about that another week.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, I think, and that's kind of what it boiled down to for me was like the OU game. I really felt like, or the OU Tennessee game was like, okay, OU's defense is at least a little dependable. OU's offense has got to be able to move the ball against Tennessee's defense. So I was like, okay, and that's why I kind of picked them for this Alabama game. I mean, man, they're going to have some sort of run game at least, and Mateer is going to have to kind of come to life, so to speak, to beat them, in my opinion, because the secondary is kind of where I know they had a couple of interceptions against Aguilar yesterday, but that's where Alabama's got to attack the defense secondary, and they definitely got weapons, and Ty Simpson's very good and accurate. So,
yep. Okay, let's get into this ACC implosion a little bit. And one of the things, by the way, we were on it before a lot of national guys were on it because I've been saying since like week 5 that we could get 3 ACC teams in the playoffs and how that's not good. And just this last week, I've seen more and more people talk about, oh my God, there may be 3 teams from the ACC. Well, I guess it doesn't matter because no one wants to win the ACC. And I think what happened yesterday is it pretty much cements that the ACC is at most going to get 2 teams, but probably just one, which is the way it should be. And I think we have to start with the biggest loss. And I don't understand what happened to this team. I don't know. I don't get it because they had arguments to be the best team in the country at one point, and they have good wins, and that is Miami. They lose in overtime 26-20. I don't know how much you were able to watch this game because I know that was when Texas was on.
Yeah, I wasn't,
I,
but
I, I was able to watch it. And by the way, something we haven't talked about either is this ESPN YouTube TV crap. And we don't have to get into it, but it made it more difficult than even I realized
it
by the way I
was.
set up the TVs. I
Yes.
had to bring the laptop out too. So anyway, keys for this game was, this is Miami's first road game outside of the state of Florida.
Hmm.
That's a big deal. I mean, road games are tough. And SMU is not necessarily a pushover, although I think this is SMU's first home win over a top 10 opponent in 51 years, what I'm seeing
It
here. So,
was since
yeah,
'74, which is was that Eric Dickerson? Was he still there? I forget, but
don't know. But,
the Pony
you know,
Express, in other words, though.
yeah, 12 penalties, two turnovers, the big interception. We've talked about it with Carson Beck all year at the end of the game. Why don't they just run the ball? I don't know, third and goal from the 1 yard line. That's not SMU beating Miami. That's Miami beating Miami. And
Yep.
that's how I feel about Miami. Like SMU played well. They deserve it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But this is about Miami. This is really not about SMU. And again, came down to those two interceptions. And you also obviously you're gonna talk about Carson Beck, but Mario Cristobal, like
Yep.
he's built a pretty good team, but you kind of see this Miami team now year after year. It almost
Same
makes me
thing. And the same thing happened last year with Cam
yep,
Ward. Okay, I mean, very good at the beginning, and I mean, I think like last year was like pretty much the very end of the season when they had their implosion. It's just happening a little bit sooner this season. Okay, so there's kind of this narrative with Mario Cristobal, and definitely not the same level to Hugh Freeze by any means, but Mario Cristobal has everything and then some. Miami is definitely like a top tier job. You could go outside his building, throw a rock, go get a good athlete, go get him in here. He has money up the wazoo. What's going on here? At this point, I don't think it's the players. I think it's the coaching. And I hate to say it, but I think Miami can maybe be doing a better job, to be honest, with a different head coach. And it depends on who they get in there, right? But
you couldn't be upset. It's probably not going to happen, but
yeah,
I could see next year it being a James Franklin situation. I mean,
for
it's
sure. And
the ACC is a tough conference.
yeah, and I mean, in all fairness, though, before Mario Cristobal got there, what was Miami? I mean, Miami had been down for like 10 years, So, like, give him credit for what he's been able to do at Miami. It's just, especially now with the NIL portal, like, Miami is one of those schools that could go in and contend for almost anybody. So, I don't know. It was interesting from that standpoint. I think another interesting story was, I don't know if you saw the press conference with Dabo, like after his game,
Yeah, I saw
after
that.
that. What isn't it sad? I don't know. I don't know why it makes me sad for some reason, but him to like seriously think he's about to get fired after he exited, it's crazy. But I thought that was a crazy game too, just because I think Manny Diaz is a good coach. I really think he is. But man, just where Clemson is at right now in the season, I would not have thought that.
Well, you wouldn't have thought that about a lot of these teams, and also wouldn't have thought in the ACC, the championship game is not going to feature Clemson. It's not going to
Yeah.
feature Miami. It's not going to feature Florida State. You
Yep.
know, that's
Virginia
pretty.
may very well. Which who would have thunk that, huh?
So here's the thing about Virginia. I don't know if you know this. Virginia is 8-1.
Mhm.
They are undefeated in the conference.
Yeah.
Do you know who their one loss is to?
No, not off the top of my head.
North Carolina State. Guess what conference North Carolina State is in?
ACC.
The ACC. Does
Yeah.
not count as a conference loss
And they
because they
just
had
knocked off Georgia Tech yesterday.
They did, but it's weird because Virginia's in a situation they have a loss and it's to a conference opponent, but it doesn't count as a conference loss. So pretty interesting. You've got five
Say that
teams.
again, actually.
Virginia is undefeated in
Right.
conference play, but they have a loss, and it's to North Carolina State, who is
How is
in.
that possible?
Well, I was trying to explain it to you,
Oh,
uh, but North Carolina State, they had a they were on the schedule prior to the season. So the way they worked it out is they said, okay, well, we'll just do a home and home, but it won't technically be a conference match,
hmm.
which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's very odd. Holy crap.
It's setting up an interesting scenario here where you've got six teams now. Virginia up top, no conference losses, but then Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, Louisville,
All
SMU,
these
and
one
Duke
loss. Yeah.
all have one. And Georgia Tech, weirdly enough, we can transition now into that North Carolina State game who beat Georgia Tech. I was
Yeah.
wondering if Georgia Tech was going to run the table because these teams in the ACC seem to all be kind of even. Yeah, I feel bad for Georgia Tech because I think they're a legitimately good team, but they can only go as far as Haynes King takes them, and he's a great
He did
player, but
everything
he can't do
yesterday.
it
Yeah.
all. Yeah, he can't do it all. It's really
Yeah.
just him.
400
So
passing yards, 100
yeah,
rushing yards. What else could you expect your quarterback to do?
right.
Nothing.
It wasn't him. I mean, it was the defense. It gave up
Yeah.
48 points.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's gonna be an interesting conference. No idea, but I think at this point we'll see what happens.
Hmm.
I think you just got to take one team. Now the thing is with Georgia Tech, they could still win out, and they've got Georgia at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Watch out! I'm telling you, I think Georgia
Oh
Tech
yeah,
can
for
win.
sure. Well, last year, I
Yeah.
mean, they took them to two overtimes. Georgia Tech's better team this year, so who's to say? And you could argue that Georgia's a little bit less of a good team this year. I mean, they've done some tweaks in offense, but I feel like their defense was better last year. So, hey, I mean, it'll be definitely an interesting game for sure.
So who's your favorite right now? I know you don't have all the schedules in front of you, but you have
Yeah.
Virginia, Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, Louisville, SMU, Duke. All of those are contenders. Who wins it in the ACC?
Honestly, I've been on the Georgia Tech wagon for the whole year. I'm in
Yeah.
Haynes King. I feel like some of these teams might have some better players than Georgia Tech does, but I feel like they're very similar to Vanderbilt and just the mindset they have. And I feel like it's a very elite one. And I feel like that's where the separation is for me. Like, I feel like it's going to really piss them off that they lost to NC State. And I feel like it's going to put a fire under their butt and just make them come out and just beat everybody. I'm going to take a look at who they play next.
Yeah, the rest of the
They play
schedule is
Boston
pretty.
College, which actually
Yeah.
competed with Notre Dame. We don't really have to say anything about that game, but Notre Dame ended up pulling it out. What was it, 20-10 or something like that? But one of the trying to think, maybe the lowest scoring game of all season for Notre Dame, if I'm not mistaken. Because I think
Yeah,
even when they played Miami, it was, huh?
they scored 25, and that sounds about right.
Yeah.
The lowest.
So anyway, not that I'm going to put too much stock into Boston College, but there's sometimes a sneaky team. There's a lot of ACC schools that are sneaky teams, to be honest, like that pick up a weird win every now and then they have that Pitt game and then Georgia. So I don't know. I really like Georgia Tech.
I agree. Like, I think they're probably the best team in the ACC. I just don't know how some of these tiebreakers are going to work. I could argue Louisville,
Yeah,
but
I like their
they've
coach.
got Cal, Clemson, SMU. Like, they should beat all those teams, but those are losable games at the same time.
Hmm.
So they have a kind of a tough path. Virginia, good. I don't know if I respect them totally.
Hmm.
So that's going to be interesting, but I hope they only get one team. I just think I'd rather get either a fifth SEC team. By the way, this was very good for Notre Dame, these losses that occurred in a weird way, because it's bad that Miami lost, but being that less slots now are going to come from the ACC in terms of the playoff race, it opens
Thankfully,
up door for Notre Dame, and I think that's totally deserved because I think they're truly one of the top teams in the nation. Notre Dame, I'm talking about,
Yeah,
and they should win out. So
right. Yeah, I definitely think Notre Dame. Oh man, I don't know. I think Marcus Freeman is going to be a really hot name. It'll be interesting to see what Notre Dame does to keep him there at the end of the year. Really.
yep, agreed. Okay, let's just kind of talk about some of these games now. There is a game I kind of want to talk about maybe a little bit more than the others, and that
Mm.
is 23 USC beating Nebraska. I don't know how much you watch this game. This to me, like honestly, of the games I was most excited to watch, this was maybe top two, maybe top one. And I hate the way this game kind of ended because it
Hmm.
was a great game and it didn't go the way I thought it would. I thought USC would put up some points. They didn't. Credit to Nebraska for holding USC the way they did. And I'm sorry. I think Nebraska won this game because obviously his name Raiola
Yeah.
um, went out of this game. I think 100% Nebraska was moving the ball well. They were running the ball well, but that backup just was not able to execute their playbook, and they found themselves in a 2-minute situation late in the game. There were like 3 minutes left, and they had one timeout, and it took them a full minute and 17 seconds to get to the 2 minute
Oh,
warning, and they ran like two plays, and they barely got the two plays off. The guy just wasn't ready. And I just feel bad because, and I feel bad for USC too because it kind of takes away from their win. Probably not that they care too much.
yeah.
Lincoln Riley hadn't had a road win like this, and Nebraska had a chance to beat an AP top 25 team for the first time in however many games. Just a big game for both teams.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't think USC looked good at all. They look how they always look, not good on the road. I was surprised their offense was that bad, but
That
yeah,
second
there's
ranked pass defense like came up big because just looking at the stats, their quarterbacks, which USC's quarterback, he was doing lights out, 9 of 23 for 135 yards and an interception, so absolutely horrible. On the flip side, to your point though about that backup for Nebraska, 5 of 7, 7 passing yards, averaging
no,
like
he was
do what?
not good. He was
Oh
not
yeah,
good.
yeah. It was horrible. I mean, good run game on both sides of the ball. I saw that Rayola went out for the rest of the year though.
Oh,
Broke,
really? I did not see that.
yeah, he's got a broken fibula,
That's
so
not.
he's out the rest of the year. So, like you said, like to your point, that guy wasn't ready yesterday, but he's got to be ready now.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Let's.
it really does suck though, like you were saying for Matt Rule, just because Lincoln Riley, like screw him, just because OU guy, whatever. But Matt Rule really liked the guy, and I was more so watching the Tennessee OU game than I was with this one. And then to your point earlier about the YouTube situation, like the to watch the OU game, you had to have it on ESPN Plus. To watch the uh, USC Nebraska game, you had to have it on YouTube TV. And I didn't feel like going to the extra links to have my laptop out or anything to watch both games at once. So therefore, I chose the OU and Tennessee game, but for both teams, yes, there was something special out of it if they came out with a win. Ugly win, but I guess to some extent, some credit for USC. So, anyway,
Yeah, still looking to see who that fourth team in the Big Ten is going to be. Everyone has a shot. Michigan one loss, Iowa one loss, USC one loss, and obviously Iowa's going to be facing Oregon this week. That's going to be a good game. But as far as USC goes, they host Northwestern, which isn't necessarily the easiest game, but they're probably going to win that one. And then host Iowa and then at Oregon. So at least from like a big game perspective, we're going to get some kind of exciting games going forward. And especially if Iowa can find a way to pull out the upset against Oregon. But either way, that would be a big game in 2 weeks, USC and Iowa. So Big Ten's looking interesting. It's looking more and more like they're going to get a fourth team. And Michigan probably has to beat Ohio State to have a shot. So you think realistically it's between Iowa and USC at this point. Like that's probably just the two teams. It's going to be one of those two. So that's
Something
going
I'd
to
like
be
to say is this upcoming weekend matchup with Iowa and Oregon. Both of those teams are coming off of a bye week for this game, so I definitely think like there's probably
gonna
not
be
going to be
great.
much. Do what?
It's going to be a great game,
Yeah, yeah, it's probably not going to get just all that much coverage on it, just because Iowa is not ranked, and Oregon
which is
obviously
ridiculous.
is. But yeah, and you could argue that for sure. Um, but I think it's going to be a sneaky game, and I believe it's going to be a night game at Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, actually, no, it's a 2:30 game. Gosh, that's actually horrible. Well, all right, now Oregon wins, so
Yeah, that'll be an interesting game to talk about and
it will be.
cover because Oregon's Oregon, but they don't have a signature win yet. I mean, they do. That's not true. They have Penn State, but I still count that as a signature win. But
Many
it
people
does
don't.
feel like they're due for another test, and
Yeah.
Iowa will be a test. So,
Hmm.
so that's going to be good. What did you watch any other games? Anything else you wanted to talk about that took place this past weekend?
One thing I wanted to bring up was the absolute dog crap that Utah beat out of Cincinnati, and I think it
Yeah.
kind of, and I think that was the question that I had for Cincinnati during in the pregame, like who have they played? And I'm telling you, Utah is just, they're definitely a team to watch. Do I think they're going to go far in the college football playoff or anything? Probably not, but they're just a tough mentally team. I love Coach Whittingham. Love what he has done for like ever at Utah. 41-7 victory over Cincinnati. Definitely interesting. I think it's going to be interesting for College Game Day to be at Lubbock this upcoming weekend for the BYU game. Um, which Lubbock, it sucks that Texas doesn't play Texas Tech anymore, just because that was honestly a good rivalry kind of in the last 10 years or so. It was always a scary game because Texas Tech, regardless of how they were doing or whatever, always scared Texas. Um, so anyway, I think that's interesting. I'm trying to think. I want to say off the top of my head there was something else in the Big 12 that was interesting, but
West Virginia beating Houston. Houston had a
yes,
good shot to,
yeah,
be in contention for the Big 12, be a legit contender, and they failed. And West Virginia just beat them. West Virginia is one of those teams you got to watch out for. They can just randomly beat you. Big 12 is like that, but too bad for Houston to not be able to, do
I
anything.
know, I know, because Wegman, the secondhand
Good.
A&M quarterback, man, he's been playing better and wasn't able to put him over the top with West Virginia. So anyway, still, I think it's still going to be an interesting conference, though. Let me look at BYU's schedule real quick. Just their last couple games. They play at Cincinnati in, I guess, 2 weeks. So that could be interesting for sure. Tech after this BYU game, man. I mean, they play UCF and West Virginia. So if they're able to handle business at BYU, in all likelihood, definitely going to the Big 12 championship. Let's see. Man, kind of sucks to see Oklahoma State all the way at the bottom, 1-8. Man, gosh,
Yeah, they've been really bad.
they have. Trying to.
I guess the game I would briefly mention, these American Conference games that have kind of been taking place haven't been getting a ton of attention, but Navy had a really good opportunity
Oh,
to,
yesterday against North Texas.
if they would have won, they would have been in the top 25, and then they would have faced Notre Dame this week, and they would have had a pretty good it would have been a pretty good game to look forward to. But Navy also hadn't really faced anybody, and then the moment they face somebody like North Texas, they get basically blown out. I watched the game. North Texas basically controlled it, and North Texas now, we were talking about Memphis and South Florida for that 12th team to get in. North Texas has a very good shot to be that number 12 team that gets in. They got to win the conference. I don't know the way that tiebreakers are going to work, but right now, Navy, Memphis, and North Texas and South Florida all have one loss. Tulane faces who did they? I want to say Tulane faces Memphis this week. I'll check on that, and that'll be big for the American
They do.
Tulane, Memphis. Yeah, so a
I think
lot
it's
going
a
on in
Friday
the
game at
conference.
8 p.m.
Washington is these are basically playoff games, and Navy has a tough schedule at the end. They face like all these teams at the top. I think they're out of it, to be honest with you, because I just don't think they measure up against these other teams. But right now, if I had to choose a team to be the favorite, I would probably choose North Texas. So credit to them; they needed to win this game, and yeah.
Yeah, Tulane plays at Memphis. I think it's this Friday at 8 p.m. And it's at Memphis. Who Memphis last week they had a pretty good win. I forgot who it was over. I forgot off the top of my head. Uh, oh,
Rice,
excuse me.
the
Not
wing from
yeah, yeah,
USF.
yeah. USF. That's who I was thinking of. Yeah. So yeah, it could be interesting. I don't know. To be honest with you, I find it hard just to be interested in that conference. But other than maybe the storylines or whatever, but I just feel like I don't know. I'll probably
The
just say
thing I would say that I disagree with, the good thing is like a lot of these teams play on Friday and they produce some pretty good games. Like this past week, it was on Saturday, North Texas and
Navy.
Navy, but it was actually like a kind of a fun game to watch. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not the prime time game, but it's pretty. I don't know, it's pretty entertaining when the top teams actually face each other. I know what you mean though, but yeah. So in terms of other games, anything else you want to talk about? I think Ohio State takes care of business, but I don't think there's much to talk about there unless you have something. I think in terms of the schedule, we've kind of covered it. But what do you think?
I think that's really about it. I mean, I figured Penn State would at least come out, keep it close at the first half, and then Ohio State pull out the second half, and that's exactly what happened. So, hmm. Which now that makes Penn State what 3-5 or
Yeah, 3-5.
yeah 3-5 yeah. But yeah,
Okay.
nothing else off the top of my head.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps us up. I think this week we are going to have some exciting stuff to talk about in the preview show. We have some pretty big games that we've already kind of mentioned in this episode. So I'm excited to get to that, talk about that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got. And yeah, it's been another episode of Blown Coverage. Caleb, I will talk to you next time.
Next time.